You move to a new city, where you don't know a single street, a single face, a single shortcut. For the first few weeks, everything is unfamiliar in a low-grade, exhausting way. Where the good grocery store is, which neighborhood to avoid at night, who you can actually trust. Eventually, you build a map in your head. It stops being scary, it starts being home. Now imagine doing that, except the city is an entire continent no human being has ever set foot on. No trail markers. No one who's gone before you to say which plants are poisonous or which animals will kill you. Every single thing you learn first. That's not a thought experiment. Someone actually did it. And thanks to a patch of ancient mud in the New Mexico desert, we now know it happened thousands of years earlier than anyone believed. For most of the 20th century, the standard story was simple. Humans crossed from Siberia into Alaska around 13,000 years ago, once the ice sheets finally opened a corridor south and quickly spread across two empty continents. It was called the Clovis First model, named for the distinctive stone spear points found near Clovis, New Mexico. Then, in 2021, researchers dug into an ancient lake bed at White Sands and found footprints, dozens of them, layered in mud, that radiocarbon dating placed at between 21,000 and 23,000 years old. That's nearly 10,000 years before Clovis. It's during the coldest, harshest stretch of the entire Ice Age, the last glacial maximum, when most scientists assumed towering ice sheets made passage into the continent physically impossible. Humans were already there, already raising children there, already hunting there, roughly 2,000 years before the ice sheets were even supposed to let anyone in. So who were these people? What did it actually feel like to be among the first humans to ever walk a continent? One still crawling with mammoths, giant ground sloths, dire wolves, and animals that had never learned to fear something that walked on two legs. We don't have their names, their language, or a single word they spoke. But between fossilized footprints, ancient DNA, and one extraordinary child's burial, we can reconstruct their days with startling precision. Start with the footprints themselves, because they're almost unbearably human. The White Sands tracks preserve ordinary moments frozen mid-motion. A woman's trackway shows a toddler's small footprints beside hers. Then the child's prints vanish entirely as her own stride widens and deepens under the extra weight. She picked the kid up and kept walking. Elsewhere, a set of tracks shows what looks like a small hunting party moving in on a giant ground sloth. Most of the footprints at the site, strikingly, were left by teenagers and children, not adults, hinting that young people did much of the fetching, gathering, and running errands around camp, the same as they would in any hunter-gatherer society since. Genetics fills in the bigger picture. What's called the Beringian standstill hypothesis holds that the ancestors of Native Americans didn't rush straight from Siberia into the Americas. Instead, a population became genetically isolated in Beringia, the now submerged land bridging Siberia and Alaska, for thousands of years during the Ice Age, developing a distinct genetic signature before ever moving south. Some researchers push the timing of that initial crossing back as far as 30,000 to 18,000 years ago, long before anyone was making a Clovis point. By around 13,000 years ago, a distinct culture had emerged across North America. Clovis, named for its fluted stone spear points, sharp enough and precisely engineered enough that modern flint knappers still study them. And we know exactly what these people were eating, thanks to one remarkable discovery: the skeleton of an infant boy buried around 12,600 years ago at a site called Anzick in Montana, the only human remains from the entire Clovis period ever found. He was laid to rest with more than 100 stone and bone tools, all coated in red ochre. Chemical analysis of his bones, built from the food his mother ate, shows a diet made up of roughly 40% mammoth meat, alongside elk and bison. Researchers have a blunt name for people who ate like that: super carnivores. Picture a small band moving across the open grassland of Ice Age North America, somewhere between 20,000 and 13,000 years ago. Morning. There's no permanent camp. These groups are highly mobile, following game across a landscape reshaped by melting glaciers. You wake in a hide shelter with a handful of family members, maybe 15 to 30 people total, everyone you'll ever know in your life. Before anything else, someone checks the wind. In a world without fences or trails, the wind tells you where the herds are and whether anything dangerous has caught your scent overnight. Work. The band's survival runs on tracking. mammoth, mastodon, giant bison, animals that can feed dozens of people for weeks if you can actually bring one down. Hunters move in coordinated groups, using the terrain itself as a weapon, driving animals toward a bog, a narrow ravine. Anywhere their size becomes a disadvantage instead of a defense. When a kill lands, a fluted spear point does the finishing work. A tool so effective that variations of it spread across the entire continent within a few generations. This isn't hunting as sport. Chemical analysis of Clovis-era bones shows some children were getting nearly half their calories from megafauna. A missed hunt isn't a bad week. It's a real crisis. Social life. Children are woven into every part of camp life, not sheltered from it. The white sand's footprints make this almost literal. Kids trailing adults on long treks, tagging along on a stalk, being carried when they got tired and set down again when they didn't. There's no separate childhood spent apart from the serious business of survival. The serious business of survival is childhood. Whatever stories or beliefs the group holds are passed the only way they can be, by voice, around a fire, from people who were themselves told those same stories by people even further back. Afternoon. With no crops to tend, the rhythm bends entirely around what the land offers that day. Gathering edible plants, processing hides from the last kill, repairing tools, replacing a spear point that shattered on impact. Tool-making itself is a skill passed hand over hand, an elder guiding a teenager's grip on the stone. Everything the band owns has to be carried on foot to the next site. Nothing built to last in one place, everything built to move. Evening. As it cools, the group gathers close, sharing whatever the day provided. If it was a good hunt, there's more meat than can be eaten before it spoils, and much of it gets shared, dried, or otherwise preserved for the harder days that are always coming. If it wasn't, the band goes to sleep a little hungrier, a little more anxious about tomorrow's tracking. Either way, someone stays alert. Dire wolves and short-faced bears haven't learned yet what humans are capable of, and neither has anyone learned yet, for certain, what they're capable of. Strip away the mammoths and the fluted spear points, and the underlying shape is one we'd still recognize. Total mobility, carrying only what you can move on your own back, is the exact instinct behind modern minimalism and the digital nomad life, just with much higher stakes. A family unit where children learn by tagging along instead of sitting in a classroom is still how most human beings on Earth learned everything for the overwhelming majority of our species' existence. And the anxiety of not knowing whether tomorrow's effort will pay off, whether the hunt lands, whether the harvest holds, whether the job offer comes through, is the same anxiety, just wearing different clothes. What's genuinely unrecognizable is the total absence of any guide. No maps, no elders who'd made this exact journey before, no species on this continent that had ever learned humans were a threat. Every single lesson about this land, what's edible, what's dangerous, where the water is in a drought year, had to be learned from scratch, once, by someone, and then carried forward by memory alone. Every person who has ever called the Americas home, every indigenous nation with roots reaching back thousands of years, every city, every road, every name on a map traces back to footsteps pressed into the mud of a shrinking ice age lake by people who had no idea they were making history. They weren't explorers in the way we use that word now. They were just trying to feed their kids, track the next herd, and make it to the next camp before dark. They didn't know they were first. They just knew they were here. 23,000 years before anyone thought to look for them, and long before the story of this land was supposed to have started at all.